All right, guys. Hey, welcome back. Just getting things ready to roll. Hope everybody's doing good and had a good weekend. We're just gonna have one more little lecture right now, and then we'll be ready to go with our review session next class. And then a week from today will be the midterm exam. So anyway, we've got about a minute or so left until class. Hi, guys. Hi, Julie and Gary, Cameron, everybody else. 1 second, actually. I'll be right back. Got a new pack of these extra markers, so hopefully a little more legible. I'm up here writing. Bullet tip. It's a little bit thin, but whatever. Hey everybody, hi Ricardo. Oh, thank you for the haircut compliment. There's a place here in Long Beach that I always go to. It's Extreme Fades, Long Beach. Anybody's trying to get like a fade haircut, that's the place where you go. You know, I get the taper fade every 2 or 3 months. So, anyways, welcome back, everybody. How much was it? My guy Josh does it for 25 bucks, but I tip him, so I give him 40 even, just because he does a good job. You know, he lines up the beard and he does like all the other stuff too. So I mean, it's like it's a legit barber for sure. If you're ever in Long Beach, hit up Extreme Fades. That's my boy over there, Josh. He'll be right. But anyway, okay, guys. Thanks again for being here, and let me just make sure everybody's following along with my little announcements and stuff. Did some of you guys notice this morning that I delivered the announcement that I finished the grading, and I've also given you guys a study guide last week, so you've had that for a while. If you're following the calendar in the syllabus, then you know that we have a couple of upcoming dates. Next class period is when we do the review session, and then next Tuesday, a week from today, is when we have the midterm itself. So we just have a couple more meetings. Today's part 2 of the trolley problem lecture series. So we did the first half of it on Thursday last week, and then we just have a couple of leftover comments and notes on that essay to finish with today. 1 second. Sorry, guys, I have another window I got to close. Just give me 2 minutes, 1 minute on that. Sorry, just takes me 1 second because I have to close this other app where I've got some documents coming in. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks again. Okay, so back to the trolley problem. Let me bring you back up to speed on the introduction to the paper, and then I'll finish up the last part of it right now. Okay, so this is the paper by this author, Judith Jarvis Thompson, from 1985, classic paper, The Trolley Problem. Okay. Now, when it comes to the trolley problem, there's a couple of different hypothetical scenarios that kind of drive the whole essay and the argument. The big picture of this essay is that the author is trying to explore some puzzling contradictions that seem to exist in our intuitions morally about these situations involving either killing or letting die. seems like in one situation where a general reaction that most people have is that it's okay to take an action which leads to the death of one but prevents the death of five, that same intuition doesn't carry over to another very similar hypothetical scenario in which a subject could take an action leading to the death of one but preventing the death of five. So the original statement of the trolley problem had to do with the juxtaposition of audience responses to the trolley driver case versus the transplant case. Now, in the trolley driver case, we are told that there's a trolley out of control. It's on a pathway to hit 5 people on the track. And the driver who's at the control switch has the ability to hit a switch which would send the trolley onto another stretch of the track. But unfortunately, up on that stretch of the track, there's one person. So if he hits the switch, he won't kill the 5, he'll instead kill the 1. When people are asked, would it be morally permittable or not for him to do that, the general response, the overwhelming response that people have is that it's not a wrong thing and it is okay. But if we go to the transplant scenario, the question is asked, so what if a transplant surgeon had the ability to kill one innocent, healthy person, take their organs, and spread them to 5 people that all need organs to survive, otherwise they'll die. Now, when people are asked, would that be okay, right or wrong, morally, overwhelmingly people say, no, that's wrong, that's not okay. For the surgeon, it's wrong to do that. But for the trolley driver, it's not wrong for him to touch the switch. Now, one attempt to try and explain why is it that people find the one case to be something wrong to do, and they don't feel that way about the other case. One attempt to explain away the problem was given by the philosopher Philippa Foot. Okay, so maybe you may remember some features of Philippa Foot's so-called solution. What do you know about that? So what did Philippa Foot say? She said that the solution might be something having to do with these 2 moral principles. Number 1, that it's worse to do what than to do what. Let's just see if you can tell me in the chat. By the way, just to anyone watching this, I mean, I know you guys are here, the 23 people that are in the room or that are in the live stream. It's good that you're here. To the others watching this later as a replay, please come to the live meetings as much as possible. I know that it's a later evening class, and I know that you have the ability to watch the replay, so it might take away some of your initiative or drive to attend it live. But I just think it's better for you and for everybody to have the maximum attendance possible. So it's not like I'm hunting people down trying to force them to attend class or serving them with rewards or punishments, but depending on what they're doing. But I'd love to see more of you guys here. So to the other people watching this later, I've got my eye on you. You need to come back to the class. So anyway, to the people that are here, what were these things that Philippa Foot said? She said that there's 2 claims that seem true, and they help to maybe solve the trolley problem. Put them in the chat, somebody, and tell me what those were. 2 moral principles about what's worse to do than something else. So one claim is that it's worse to kill 5 than to kill 1. Good, Dewey. The other one was that it's worse to what than what. That was one of them, so we got that. What's the other one? And it is worse to kill 1 than to let 5 die. Exactly. Okay, so you guys see what he wrote there in the chat. Now, Philippa Foot believed that if we agree with those 2 statements, then that can solve the problem, because consider the choice of the driver. The driver is faced with this terrible choice, really, to either continue on a straightforward path, and if he does that, he's going to end up killing 5 people. But if he hits the switch, then he doesn't kill 5, and instead he switches the path, so he kills 1 instead. So when he switches it, he's doing the thing that's not as bad. It would be worse for him to continue on the straight path, because killing 5 is worse than killing 1. If you had to kill a number of people, it'd be worse to go for the bigger number, and better to go for the smaller one. Now, in the second case, though, transplant surgeon, he's not looking at killing 1 or killing 5. Because if he doesn't do anything to the one guy and leaves him alone, then when the other 5 people die, they're not dying from him, from the doctor. So it's not like when they die, he's the killer. They die of just organ failure. So it's a different kind of case. Therefore, you may say that the surgeon does the thing that's not as bad because it's worse to kill 1 than to let 5 die. But the driver does the thing that's less bad, because by switching, he does the thing that's not as bad as killing 5. Now, what Thompson said is that the problem still, though, hasn't been solved. And the way that she tries to explain how it has not been solved is to modify the trolley case. And this is kind of where we left off last time. So now I'm going to pick up again with some of the drawings and diagrams that illustrate the cases she's mentioning in her essay. So She switches up the driver case just a little bit, and if you can remember, the way that she changes it is that she replaces it with this scenario, which is called bystander at the switch. Now, in the bystander at the switch case, you do have this trolley, and it's just going forward. But in this case, the driver is knocked out cold, and he's unconscious. Anyway, the trolley is still going on that path, and it can hit these 5 people if nothing is changed, which would result in their death. And that's just not good at all. Again, there's a fork in the trolley path that leads to this other individual, but there's only one up there. And in the situation in this case, there's this guy or girl, whoever, a bystander standing by, and they see this switch there. So he knows that if he flips the switch, it changes the trolley to the other side of the track, and then it won't allow the trolley to hit the 5 people on its current course. So when people are asked about bystander at the switch, and by the way, I shared some videos today having to do with this essay to our class. So if you ever have a chance, you know, it would be helpful for you for your review and for just your comprehension of the article to look at that video. It's like 45 minutes. So if you have some time at some point, you know, just hang out and check it out. At least halfway, you know, paying attention to it would be better than nothing. In that video, you know, they describe all these cases and more. But you'll see in the video how people actually are surveyed and given a poll in a big auditorium classroom with like hundreds of students there. And so, yeah, the overwhelming response to the bystander scenario is that if he does flip the switch, the bystander, that's not wrong. That's not wrong any more or less than the case of the driver doing it. So people don't seem to be fazed by that little switch up in the case. When we make it the bystander who could intervene, people still are like, okay, but that's not wrong either. But this makes Foote's solution no longer viable. Because Foote said what? Dewey, you remember, she said that it's worse to kill 5 than 1. It's also worse to kill 1 than to let 5 die. When it was driver versus transplant, it looked like their choices were different. But when we are looking at the comparison of bystander and transplant, the choices no longer look different between the 2 individuals. Because consider the bystander. By flipping the switch and touching the switch, he involves himself in the scenario, and of course that kills 1 person. By him touching the switch, this guy dies. But if he doesn't touch the switch, he's not the one who is riding along in the trolley, driving it. He's not even on the whole moving object. So in that situation, he would have allowed the 5 people to die from a trolley accident that he was not involved in personally. But if this is kill 1 versus let 5 die, then Foote's solution should have had the result that people would find this to be immoral. But they don't. So it looks like it's kill 1 and let 5 die both in the bystander and the transplant case, but the reaction of the audience is still only finding it wrong in the case of transplant, but not in bystander. So Foote's solution has not shown itself to work. And now we can actually give the precise statement of the trolley problem in the light of this new case, the bystander version. So the trolley problem has a precise statement, and this is what it is exactly. It takes a little work to build up to being able to say it, because we have to first describe the 2 original cases, talk about Foote's attempted solution, why it fails, and then this precise statement of the problem can be stated. And what it is this. Why do most people feel that the action of bystander is not wrong, but that the action of transplant is wrong? So the trolley problem is a question. It's this question. It's a question about what is leading to the different reactions that audiences overwhelmingly have to these various cases. The question that's still looking us in the face, the problem that's still waiting for a solution, is to answer this. Why is it then that most people think that it's not wrong to do what the guy did in bystander, but it is wrong to do what the guy did in transplant? Okay, so now prepared to ask this question and try and get the answer, we look to another solution. Okay, so there's another attempted solution that is mentioned here by Judith Thompson after that, and it has some, it has a little bit of credibility. It seems like it's plausible, but then at the end, she also tries to show that it's not going to work either. So there's two failed solutions that she mentions before she finally gets us to her what she thinks is correct answer to this question. We got to go through one more failed attempt. So one more attempted solution to the so-called trolley problem is what we can call, or what she calls, Kant's solution. Immanuel Kant, the famous German moral philosopher that we all studied a few weeks ago. So let's consider Kant's solution. Okay, so let's take a trip down memory lane for a minute and go back in our memories or our notes or whatever and think about the ideas of Kant for a moment again, okay? Immanuel Kant, philosopher of ethics, he had this concept called the categorical imperative. And we all learned a little bit about it. The categorical imperative, there's two versions of it. Thompson kind of refers to the second version here. Now, who could tell me what is the second version of the categorical imperative? It says that you should never do a certain type of thing. What is that? Second version of the categorical imperative. Do not ever, what goes after that? Just to see that back brought into our chat here. Categorical imperative version 2. When you're dealing with people, human beings, what's the rule? Let's see. No, Brooklyn, consequences are all about the work of Mill. So let us make sure not to confuse the work of Mill with Kant. Mill is the utilitarian, and yes, he did talk about consequences. You should do the thing that creates the most overall happiness. But I'm asking about the other guy who came after that. So let me see here. Andrea, never treat a human being as a means to an end, always as an end, yes. And same from Dewey, and same from you too, Gabe. Okay, that's right. So the second version of the categorical imperative says, do not ever treat a human being as a means to an end. So human beings, like we are, humans like us, one of us, they're not to be treated, oh no, it's fine, Brooklyn, but yeah, just, they're not to be, humans are not to be treated as a means to an end, but rather always as an end in themselves. So an end is a goal, a means is something that is used to obtain a goal. So people are just not supposed to be used as like toys, tools, instruments that you manipulate in order to obtain some goal that you've set for yourself. Now, one way of looking at these two cases, bystander versus transplant, and maybe why people feel that it's wrong to do what the surgeon does, but not wrong to do what the bystander does. Maybe the solution lies in the work of Kant, and here's how that could be. You could argue that in the case of transplant, the one victim that would be killed, it would be used as a means. But in the trolley case, the victim that will be hit by the trolley is not really being used as a means. Even though they die in the scenario, they're not being used as a means exactly. So let me write that here. Kant's solution. The one victim in so-called transplant would be used as a means to an end. But the one victim in bystander or in the trolley case okay, so this might be the sort of deeper reason, perhaps, you could argue, why an audience member, a randomly chosen person, has the sense inside that it's wrong to do the action of the transplant surgeon, but not wrong to do the action of the bystander or the driver of the trolley. And here could be the reason, because let's consider the transplant case for a moment. What is this victim being killed for in the transplant situation? Well, they're being killed as a means. To what end? To the goal, to the end of saving the other 5 people's lives. But according to Kant, it's wrong to use a person as a means, and that's why we have a feeling that that is wrong. People are people, they're humans, they're subjects. They're not just objects or like a source of spare parts or whatever that you just could strip parts from to put into another car or whatever. It's a person with their own judgment, with their own reason, feelings, and everything else, and therefore they have to be treated with respect, not as a means to an end. Well, consider the difference between that and the bystander at the switch or the trolley driver situation. Here's what Thompson says. Imagine, if you could, that at the last moment, right as the action was taken involving that one victim, what would it be if the person disappeared, like just vanished from the scene at the last moment? So would we still be able to save the 5 lives in the transplant situation if the if the victim, the patient that's healthy and young, if they just disappeared from the operating table at the last moment? So I'm asking you to imagine a kind of weird scene in your head. Can you do this? I know you're creative enough to do it. I want you to pretend in your mind that the surgeon, he's going over into the room to actually kill that one person and take their organs. And at the last moment when this guy's about to do the operation, boom, God or somebody just takes the victim off the operating table and they pop up in another place like miles away so they're safe. So if this guy disappeared at the last moment, the victim, would we have been able to save the 5 lives in the transplant case? That's my question to you. Would we have been able to save their lives or not? If the victim disappeared right as the surgeon was preparing to act, he would not be able to save the victim. The patients of the victim disappeared, exactly, right? Because what would he not have? He would not have the organs. The organs are what he needs. Without them, there's no life-saving potential in what he's doing. So he really kind of needs this guy to die, and he literally needs his body parts, as gross as that is, to save 5 other people. So if he were to somehow, abracadabra vanish from the scene at the last minute, you would not have been able to save the 5. But now let's go back to our bystander case, right? Suppose that at the last moment, as the trolley's bearing down, after they do flip the switch, so now trolley's going in that other direction, and somehow at the last moment, I don't know, like the old Bugs Bunny Looney Tunes cartoons, the guy on the track just slips down a rabbit hole and the trolley passes over his head. Or somehow he, gets himself free of the track and he rolls over to the side and the trolley passes by him. Or again, like God or whoever just snatches him up off of the trolley track right before the trolley could hit him and puts him in another area safely far away. Now, if the guy up there on that track disappeared right as the trolley was about to hit him, would we still have prevented the death of the 5 other people? That's another question for you. What do you think? So say that the victim, we still would have saved him, right? Because the 5 people don't really rely on his death for their survival. They just rely on the trolley going somewhere else. Now, that one guy where the trolley could be delivered, he's kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. But wouldn't it just be better for everybody if he just wasn't on that part of the track? So it's sort of like his death is an unintended side effect, a foreseeable but unintentional consequence of simply trying to change the direction of the trolley. But if he wasn't there, everyone would like that much better, because then you could have saved the 5 lives at no cost in terms of another human life, right? So it makes it seem that although both cases involve 1 person dying and 5 people being able to survive, it's really only in that transplant situation where the victim is used as a means, because in bystander and in trolley driver, although he's in the way of the trolley, we don't seek his death, and we would prefer it if he was absent from the trolley. And if he wasn't even on the track, and if he disappeared from it at the last minute, so much the better, right? So only in transplant is the person's death somehow essential to the life-saving intention of the action. Now, have we solved our problem? Because transplant victim is used as a means and bystander at the switch victim is not. It looks like it, but unfortunately or whatever, Thompson says to you, not so fast once again. Sounded like a good solution, just like maybe Foot's solution was at least initially plausible. But she says, actually, no, we still don't quite have the right solution, because if we make yet another minor modification to the trolley situation, the problem will still exist and it'll just come back again. So let's bring this trolley problem back from the dead one more time by making a new variation to the trolley case. And so this new variation is the loop version of the trolley case. Okay, so let me give you this loop case. So as before, the case has a trolley. In the trolley, there's this passed out driver that can't do anything. And forward in front of that trolley that's moving ahead are the 5 people on the track, seriously in danger of the impact of the oncoming trolley. Now, as before, there's a stretch of trolley that goes in another direction. But in this version, okay, so it's called loop. In the other versions of the trolley case, you have imagined that there are 2 divergent stretches of track, and they go on in their separate tangential directions, and that they don't somehow, loop around back to each other. But suppose that we make these little changes now. So sorry, there's also the bystander as usual. Here he is, or she. Now we're going to make this one slight adjustment to the situation. So yeah, let's say it's a loop, and up here, the one guy, I don't know how to say it, but this is just a large gentleman. And the loop is there. All right, now, why is it that we've made it this way? Well, the reason he's described as being so large is because if the bystander hits the switch, it directs the trolley in his way. And because he's that big, I guess the claim, or, well, in the hypothetical for sure, it blocks the oncoming trolley from continuing on. So it stops its forward momentum, and therefore it doesn't continue around the loop to kill the other 5 people from the opposite side. If it goes on this direction, as it's already going, then it will kill 5 people of more moderate body size, but the 5 of them combined is sufficient in mass to also prevent the forward travel of the trolley, so that it would not go around and loop to kill the one big guy. Okay, so when it is the loop situation that is presented to the audience, the audience hears loop and they're like, okay, so what do you think? Would that be wrong or not wrong to redirect the trolley by the bystander when it's the loop instead of the earlier 2 cases? And, I could ask you guys to tell me what you feel about that. Would it be wrong or not when we're looking at a loop scenario? But something I can say to you that's just an objective fact is that, as a matter of fact, the vast majority of people who are surveyed in a controlled setting about this case do not think that it's wrong. So they didn't think it was wrong to flip the switch when it was driver. People basically don't think it's wrong to flip the switch when it's bystander. And now in the loop case, yet again, people are like, so what? I mean, it's a loop, it's a big guy up there, but the main thing is just it's not wrong for him to flip the switch because it's not so, it would be way worse if it hit the 5. So it seems like this didn't change anybody's mind, but still everyone, of course, agrees that it's wrong to do the transplant thing. So Kant's solution here doesn't work. Do you understand why? Because let's go back to our analysis of when a person really is used as a means or not. Suppose that as this guy flips the switch, trolley goes up in this way. Suppose that, again, like something happens where the big guy disappears from the track at the last moment. If that were to happen, then would we have saved the 5 people or no? You understand? Like, so if the loop track exists and we divert the trolley toward the big guy, but he somehow moves out of the way before it could hit him, or he just disappears whatever way at the last minute, then would we still have saved the other 5 people or no? In the case where he disappears right up at the point of action, right up at the point of impact, would we still have saved 5? In this case, yes, no, because it's a loop. So then, he slips down the Bugs Bunny rabbit hole and it just passes over the top of him. And it comes around and it just kills these guys from the other side. So it looks like he is used as a means, actually, the large man in the loop case. But that's not leading anybody to feel differently about this than they did in the other situations. So we're still faced with the same kind of problem. Why then do people say it's not wrong to flip the switch in loop, but it is wrong to do the action of the surgeon? Because aren't they both being used as a means? Yes. But if that told us why the one case was wrong and not the other, then people should have the feeling that this is a wrong action. But people don't generally feel that way. So what could be really given as a solution then? And let me make sure I'm getting everyone's comments up here. Good, Brooklyn. Yes, it's using both parties as a means to an end in both choices, exactly. And still, there's not a consensus of intuitions on the two cases, although they seem to have the same basic moral features, using someone as a means to an end to save 5 lives. Wrong in the surgeon case, not wrong in the loop case. So what's going on? Okay, well, I've kept you in suspense for long enough. Now we're finally going to get to the real solution, I guess, according to Thompson, what she thinks is the correct theoretical solution to this moral dilemma of the trolley problem. Okay, so here we go, Thompson's solution. And Thompson, she's the author of the paper, obviously, so what she thinks she's done is that she thinks she's shown how this has vexed the minds of like very smart, rational philosophers, but that she's finally uncovered the true solution, the one that cannot be further criticized. So here it is, Thompson's solution. Okay, so Judith Thompson's solution to this called trolley problem is a principle which says this, and I kind of hinted at it at the tail end of last meeting, but now let's really go into it in detail. The solution is this principle that it is okay to redirect a threat from a bigger to a smaller group of people, but, and here's the catch, it has to be the same threat that is being redirected. It can't be a different threatening thing that is faced by the big group versus the smaller one. So let me write that here. It is morally permissible to redirect a threat from a larger to a smaller group or number of people. Maybe I should say just one edit, small thing, but just I think number perhaps is better, because if it's switched to one person, then one person is not exactly a group of small size, because one person is an individual. So anyway, it is morally permissible to redirect a threat from a larger to a smaller number of people, as long as, and this is the important qualification, as long as it is the same threat that is being redirected. Okay, so hold that period, because there's one little thing I'll add in a moment. But for now, let's just try to digest this. What it says is that it's morally permissible to redirect a threat from a larger to a smaller number of people. But importantly, it has to make sure that it is the same threat. Now, let's ask some questions about the various cases that we've looked at. In the trolley cases, whether it was the driver or the bystander or the loop version, in all 3 of those different versions, what thing is a threat to 5 lives? So like there's a threat, there's a danger that is being faced by 5 human beings. But what specifically is it? In the trolley cases, like literally, what is the thing that could kill these people? The trolley, yes, Dewey, exactly. I mean, if they die, they're going to be dead by death by trolley. Yes, exactly, impacted by the trolley. But imagine that somebody intervenes, whether it's the driver in the first version of it or whether it's the bystander. If that intervention happens, then this trolley is not going to threaten 5 people, and the 5 people will be safe. But then there will be a threat, a danger, that one person is going to be facing. But what will the one person's threatening danger be? If we hit the switch, then the one person is going to be threatened by what thing? Just a question, let me know. So the trolley, yes. Again, the trolley, same trolley. It's not like a different thing. There's one trolley, it's one threat, and that threat could hit a bigger group or it could hit a smaller group. But when you hit the switch, all you're doing is diverting it into a less destructive path. But the important point there is that it's not a new threatening thing. It's the same threatening thing. We're just kind of like funneling it into the least destructive result. But go back to transplant. Okay, think of this. What is the thing that threatens the life of 5 people originally in the case? So 5 people, could die, but from what? What would kill them? dangerous threat thing is going to maybe kill those 5 people. It's a different case, so it's a different threat. Natural causes. No, Ricardo, let's focus. I'm asking you about the transplant case, right? So unless you're giving me the earlier answer, that might be the case. So organ failure, yeah, will be the thing. The natural causes of whatever led to their organ failure is going to be the killer of the 5 if they die. But suppose that the surgeon gets involved to try and prevent those 5 people dying. Well, if that happens, then maybe they'll be safe, but one person's going to be at risk. But what will be the thing that threatens the life of that one person if the surgeon gets involved? What will threaten the life of one person? What will be the thing that kills the one in the transplant case? Let me know. It's the surgeon, right? It's the homicidal surgeon. It's not organ failure. It's so, you know, it's the scalpel or whatever. It's the act of homicide. So that's not the same threat, is it? 5 people are dying from natural causes, organ failure. If a surgeon prevents their death by getting organs from an innocent victim, then that victim is not like, it's not like he transferred organ failure from 5 to 1. That's not how it works. I mean, he kills the other person in order to use their organs so that he can prevent 5 people from dying of a different problem. So we see here the difference, and that's where Thompson thinks, you know, our moral intuitions are tracking. It seems like people just generally don't find it wrong to cause some dangerous, threatening, deadly thing to simply hit fewer people. As long as it's the same threat, it seems as though people are okay with making the threatening thing just land on, descend upon fewer. But what's not okay, and what seems to be the reason people don't feel the same way about transplant case, is that it's not okay to create a whole new threat for the smaller group to face in order to prevent the one larger group from dying somehow. Okay, so like if a pilot is flying a plane which is crashing and there's no way they can regain control, so it's a tragedy, it's going to be a lost cause, this plane, and if they're spiraling downward towards like a big packed football stadium and it's going to kill like thousands of people, but the last ditch effort that the pilot can do is to avert that path, but if he does it, it descends into, let's say, a big public park where there's dozens of people, but much less than the current trajectory down. Nobody would probably think he did something wrong by trying to steer the plane into a less populated part of the ground. Because what threatens the life of the big group will be his crash landing on the plane. And if he can somehow switch it to another direction so it's going to land on a smaller number, you know, maybe not 0, but a smaller number, then people think, well, you know, it's the same threat, this plane. And the only question is, will the big threatening plane hit a bigger or a smaller number? So trying to avert the bigger catastrophe doesn't seem to be a thing that anybody really finds wrong. And that's why I guess the intuitions that we see that are reported in these trolley cases are what they are, but not in transplant. Because yet again, even though it's like take a life of a person to prevent the death of 5, it's not just redistributing or redirecting one burden or threat. It's establishing a different one to prevent the one from hitting the 5. Okay, so there's the basics of the solution, but there's one last catch. There's one more little thing that has to be added to overcome one final objection that she is aware of, okay? So I'm going to add one last clause. There's one little last amendment to this that the author thinks is necessary. So here it is. It's morally permissible to redirect a threat from a larger to a smaller number of people as long as it's the same threat that's being redirected, and, second clause, and as long as the means of diverting the threat do not violate anyone's important rights. Okay, so that second little added statement at the bottom is needed to block a particular kind of objection. An objection that could arise from another trolley scenario that she mentions here. Okay, so we actually do have at least one more to explain why this last little added clause is required. Okay, so that means I'm going to have to draw a new picture for you so you see this information. Hopefully you've got it all in your notes. I'm going to clear that board, show you another trolley example, and that new example is going to demonstrate why this last little part had to be added to the whole principle. Okay. Okay, so this is the author's language, the way that she talks in her article. So I'm borrowing the language from her. But I want you to know that it's not a good way to talk overall, and it's probably not the most nicest thing she could have said. It's just it's a hypothetical example. But anyway, what she calls it is Fat Man on the Bridge. So in keeping with the author, that's the title of this scenario, Fat Man on the Bridge. Okay, so here, picture this, trolley, out of control, going straight forward, unconscious driver, can't touch the switch or anything else. It's going forward towards 5 people. Okay, now, in this, let's call it man on the bridge case, there's no fork in the trolley anymore. And there's also no bystander and there's no switch at all. So it seems like these guys are just doomed in that case because, what can you do? If the trolley's going straight forward and it can't be switched to another track, then these people are bound to die. But actually, there's one action that could possibly prevent that. And here's what it is. So there's a bridge, okay? There's a short little footbridge that's kind of like overlooks the trolley. The trolley passes underneath. So you could just stand up there and watch the trolley go by or whatever. And suppose that just on that particular day, you got these two people. One person right there, and then let's say a large gentleman. Maybe I gotta make him bigger, I guess. Just to kind of make it very clear. Okay. Now, in this case, no switch exists, but there's still 5 people that might get hit and killed by the trolley. There's only one thing that could be done that would stop the 5 people from dying from the trolley, and I'm thinking you could probably just guess what it is. Yeah, so it's, well, you say sacrifice. Be more specific. Okay, let's be clear. What do you think would be the action that could be taken here, hypothetically, to avoid the death of those 5, if what were to be done? And nobody's endorsing this action, clearly, but it's just like, it's a hypothetical scenario. So, who blocks the trolley and how? Let's just be very precise. Well, yeah, but how's he going to get down there? There's a regular guy and a big guy. You guys see that, right? It's not just one person up there. There's 2. Push him. That's right. Push the big guy. So we're not talking about, the big guy's not going to kill himself for 5 strangers. So I'm so surprised everyone's talking about him jumping. Would you do that? It'd be heroic self-sacrifice, I guess. But what about your life, right? So he pushed is the thought. That's why would I put 2 people up there? Or why does she do that? There'd be no reason to have the other guy if the one dude's just going to jump for suicide. Okay, so pushing the guy. If the regular-sized person pushes the large man off the bridge, then he'll fall, be impacted by the oncoming trolley, but he's so big that it's going to block the trolley from going any further, and it'll prevent those 5 people from dying. Now, what about that? If this man did that, push the one, what do you think will most people say? Is that wrong or not wrong to do that? What about that case? What do you think is the overall reaction to that? What's your reaction? Wrong, not correct. Okay, good, exactly. Something that's wrong to do. It's a morally impermissible action. And everybody agrees, so don't fear that you're living in a scary world where everyone's like, yeah, go ahead and push them. No, overwhelmingly people are like, yeah, that's definitely not okay and that's wrong. But, okay, that shows a problem with the original stated solution by Thompson, and this is the reason that she added that second little clause at the bottom. Okay, because consider, if the trolley hits those 5, well, it's the trolley that kills 5 people, clearly. But if this person pushes the guy off there, then what thing threatens the one large man instead of 5? Tell me that. If the push happens, then what would kill the 1 instead of the 5? You say, Gary, death by pushing. Anybody else? Say the other man. Okay, so let me not confuse you. It's not the other man that kills him directly. Indirectly he gets him in the way of the trolley, but it's the trolley that kills him. So don't think that the fall itself kills him. It's a small little, very, short bridge. So the fall is no problem. It's like, here, this is the way it plays out. Push, boom, what happened? Boom, then he gets smashed and killed by the trolley. So like he's down there, he's alive for like a split second. Then he's demolished by the trolley. So it's still the trolley, is all I'm telling you. The trolley could kill 5, or if a gentle push off of a short bridge happens, then the same trolley is going to kill 1. But everybody says this is wrong. And that might make it look like Thompson really didn't solve the problem, right? Because the solution she offered us was, you may redivert a threat, but it has to be the same threat going from a bigger to a smaller. It looks like that's what this is. So why does everyone think it's wrong? It's thought to be wrong because it violates the second part of the principle that she gave. Okay, so in this man on the bridge situation, yes, the rights are violated, but let's get to that. Good statement. So in this man on the bridge scenario, what is the action that gets him to face the threat of the trolley? Like, what physical action is the means of putting him in harm's way? In the man on the bridge case, we place this guy in harm's way by literally doing what? By pushing him, yes, by pushing him, by laying hands on this man. And that's like a form of assault, right? Now, that violates an important right that he has to not be pushed. We all have rights not to be pushed, touched, assaulted, of course, if we don't want to, particularly if it's off a bridge to our death. So it's not okay to divert the threat if what you got to do to get it is to push somebody, because the push by itself is a violation of an important right to have bodily autonomy and non-interference by other people. So that's not okay, because the means of redistributing the threat is a serious rights violation. But go back to the other trolley cases, the ones involving, bystander or driver or even loop. In those cases, what is the physical action which is the means of shifting the threat from 5 to 1? Not bridge, but the other trolley cases. In those cases, it's not a push, is it? So what is it then that shifts the threat in those cases? It's the touching of a switch. It's the flipping of a switch or the pushing of a button. And that action is not in and of itself just looked at in isolation as a rights violation. Someone looking at someone pushing a switch would not be like, that's problematic. But seeing someone pushed, you'd know that the one who's been pushed has had their rights violated. So the reason she thinks that we don't feel that it's wrong to do the action of the other trolley cases is because both it is the same threat, but also the way of diverting it is simply the touching of a switch, not laying hands on somebody and actually toppling them off a bridge, which is a means of diverting a threat that is in itself wrong. Now, in my view, her example here of man on the bridge, I mean, they're all pretty far out examples, right? But I think there are more realistic kinds of situations like this that she could have used that might have made the point, I don't know, a little bit more relatable for some of us. So let me try to give you a different version of the same kind of concept here that I thought of, and I think it's something a lot more realistic. So say that you had like a situation in the military where there's soldiers fighting in war, okay? And suppose that during this war or whatever, there's 6 soldiers that are all in a bunker, okay? So there's 6 of them in there. Now suppose that someone lobs a grenade down into that bunker. So enemy or whoever fires a grenade off and boom, it's, well, not boom yet, but it lands and it's an active grenade that's now it's sitting in a bunker with a 6, okay? So what's the thing that's threatening 6 lives right now in that case? Well, it's clear, it's the grenade blowing up and killing all of them. What is something that could be done in that case, which could cause the thing to not threaten all 6, but just 1, right? So I'm asking you, what is something that maybe could be done to prevent that grenade from harming and killing all 6 of the soldiers in the bunker, instead just killing 1 of them? If what thing was done? If you follow the example, I think you should be able to come up with something. I mean, put yourself in the situation. Boom, you're with 5 other guys, grenade falls in, oh my God. So now what? Well, sorry guys, you're talking about throw it back. Obviously that's not what I wanted because it doesn't match the features of these situations. Let's just say you're in there's a roof over your head with a mesh screen, came in through a friggin' side door. I don't know, you can't throw it up there, okay? So, Sierra, you've got the right idea here. If someone were to cover the grenade with themselves, right? So if somebody jumps on top of the grenade, you guys have maybe not seen these like heroic war movies. This is like a classic trope. He's dying for his fighting brothers, right? Now, if he did that like one like noble soldier making the ultimate sacrifice to prevent all these guys from dying. Would you say that's wrong? I don't think most people would say that's wrong, and it's actually a question that's really been asked to people in scenarios like this. So we know from that data that people don't generally think of that as wrong. In fact, some would say that it's a heroic act and that the person deserves a high degree of moral praise for that. So if one guy jumps on top of that grenade, no big deal. Look at the situation according to Thompson's analysis, right? If there's a threat, it's a grenade, it's facing 6 people, but if we can cause the same grenade to only threaten one person and one takes a voluntary act, they elect on their own volition to jump on top of it and to blunt its destructive impact, then that is a way of diverting the threat to just one person. That's not a serious rights violation, and so it's okay. But what would be a wrong, immoral way of distributing that threat so that it doesn't harm 5 and it only harms 1? What would be a wrong way of getting the same result? So it's just going to blow one of them up. Okay, yeah, push someone and tackle them and place them against their will onto the grenade. Now, wouldn't that achieve the same outcome? Yeah, 1 dead, 5 alive. But that's not an okay way to do it, because in this case, instead of like nominating yourself, you take another person and recruit them into that outcome without their willing consent. So that's a serious rights violation. Tackling someone and putting them on top of a grenade, that's not an okay way to get the same thing to threaten 1 instead of 6. But it is okay for it to be done on the basis of a voluntary act. So like, I mean, if this guy, the man on the bridge, just jumped off to his own death or whatever to get hit by the trolley, that wouldn't be the problem. But the fact that he's pushed off of it is. So I guess the big takeaway moral of the story, if there is one, is that human beings, all of us, overall, we seem to have very interesting intuitions on the concept of when it's okay to take an action that will lead to a death in an effort to prevent more death. Killing versus letting die. The overall diagnosis that Thompson thinks she's come up with that ties all these loose ends together and explains the reactions that people have is that people think it's okay to shift a burden or a threat from a bigger to a smaller group. But 2 things have to be true. It has to be the same threat, and the way of redirecting it cannot violate anybody's important rights. If you watch the video that I sent you guys, which hopefully you'll get some time to do, Tamar Gendler, who she's one of the co-editors of our book that we've all got, so that's also kind of nice to see the author of the book, editor, right, because there's many authors, but she compiled the essays and did some of the introductions and the chapters and stuff. To see her talk is kind of cool because that brings you into a little more of a connection with the work. But she talks about how there's all kinds of mitigation of risk scenarios which we test the intuitions of people using cases like these. I think she mentioned even the concept of quarantine. Suppose that you have a very dangerous, deadly disease that can't be easily treated. And you know that, like, say there's a group of people on a ship or something that have the disease, but if they're allowed back into the general population, then without an effective cure or anything, it's going to spread so much more rapidly that it'll kill a lot more people. So if you like prevent the people from getting off of the boat by means that don't exactly violate important rights in and of themselves, then people might not find that immoral because you're trying to prevent the same deadly disease from just hurting more people. So there's all kinds of like mitigation of risk scenarios that actually do come into play in all kinds of real life cases. And we just are trying to generalize from some of the intuitions that are stimulated by these cases that we think of in the laboratory of the thought experiment. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, little last thing, I guess, since there's some extra time, and I'd like to just throw this out there. I've given you the basics of the article, and that's really all that I think is most important for you to know. But at the very, very end, she says, we could drill down a little bit more into that phrase, important rights. Like, what does that really mean? So you can shift a threat from a bigger to a smaller group as long as it's the same threat, and in the means of shifting it don't violate anyone's important rights. But what is an important right? And she says, well, that's one where I don't actually want to weigh in. I'm going to leave that up to the reader. And the reader will have their own sense of what an important enough right is, that you shouldn't violate or be allowed morally to violate that, even if your goal was to prevent a greater loss of life. So pushing someone off a bridge, like in this man on the bridge scenario, that's the violation of a right that's probably by almost all judgments important, right? The right not to be pushed, assaulted, attacked physically. But there's more gray area cases when we think about scaling down the significance of the right a little bit. So let me just give you some of these extra versions that she throws out just at the very end. So what if it's private property rights, okay? So imagine the bystander who's standing by and has the switch nearby. You know, they could hit that switch and it's not going to hit 5, then the trolley will hit 1. But suppose that the switch itself is behind a little fence, which you could easily just hop over, but the fence says private property. Do not trespass. Do not cross fence. Do not touch switch. Private property. Does that make you think that, okay, now, since I have to violate someone's property rights to touch this switch, that makes it wrong to do it? I don't know. And she says, I can't tell you whether you think that's an important enough right or not. So the audience's reaction to a case like that is going to perhaps be a little bit more divided, depending on how important individuals think that property rights are. But what would you say if that was you? I don't know. Would it be like wrong or not wrong for the guy to basically hop up a fence and get on someone's private property and touch the switch? Would that make you say that, well, I mean, he was trying to just prevent it from killing 5 people, but he had to trespass, so that made it not okay? You're thinking still not wrong. I kind of feel the same way. I mean, private property is an important right. I don't want people just walking into my house for no good reason. You know, they're not allowed to do that. But if life and death was hanging in the balance, I'm not so sure it would bother me that much. So the property right one might not be important enough to qualify as the important right, but maybe that's just me speaking. You may have a more strict set of feelings about the very valid, you know, and significant importance of property rights. What about if we make the property rights example blended together with who has the property? So it says property of guy on the one side of the track worker, track man. Now not only do you have to trespass, but the switch that you're trespassing and flipping belongs to the one victim who's going to get hit by it. Does that make it seem even more wrong to you? Maybe it's a little more personal than you're not just trespassing on a random person's property, but literally the person who's going to be impacted by the train. What about a promise? That's one that she also discusses. So let me just throw this one out. Earlier in the day, you were hanging out with the track workers. You know, you guys are just friends. And you're having lunch with them on their break, and they're like, hey, have you ever heard of this trolley problems, like ridiculous essay? And you're like, oh my God, yeah, you know, it's funny because they taught me about it in philosophy. He's like, yeah, well, we work on the track. So, you know, we're trolley track workers, and we think that's a funny thing. We've talked about it too. Hey, you know what? This is a random thing, but can I just throw this out at you? I want you to make me a promise. And you're like, okay, hit me with it. What's the promise? The guy says, okay, well, I work over there on the trolley, and I've always thought about this. Like, what if this really happened where 5 were on one side and I was on the other side, someone had a switch? Well, I just want you to tell me this. Will you make me a real promise? Like, I want you to swear on it. Like, that if this situation ever really happened and I was the one guy up there, me and you, promise me, you would not switch the switch to me, right? You wouldn't do that. You promise me that? And you're like, this is a weird thing that he asking me to promise because, come on, you know this will never happen. But sure, I mean, why not? Yeah, I promise you that. If this really did happen, I swear to everything that I would not hit the switch and you'd be good to go and I would not allow it to touch you, okay? So he's like, nice, thanks. So you guys had your nice meeting and he's gone. Now, okay, later on in the day, you're still taking a walk in the local area and you're like, I cannot believe this. You see the situation playing out exactly as described in the essay. So now you're at the switch, you're the bystander, and you know, one guy that you made the promise to is up there on the other stretch. So does this make it wrong to flip the switch now? Because not only, well, I mean, what's the important right that you have to violate? You have to violate the right of having a promise kept and honored when it's made to you. So do you think that that would make it not okay to flip the switch? Or is the importance of the lives just trump the value of keeping the promise? I don't know. Would you be like, damn, I got to break this promise. I shouldn't have made it, but I did. But anyway, there's life on death now. That's a tough one, right? It would be really I don't know if my humor is just a little too dark, but I give the situation. It's in the essay, so I mean, I'm just working with the material I'm given. But I mean, it's like a weird scenario, right? Because can you imagine you're like, okay, I guess morally I feel obligated to hit the switch. You do it. Charlie starts going towards the one guy. He's like, what happened? What the hell? Didn't I have a whole conversation with you? And the whole point was that you promised me this wasn't going to happen. I can't believe this. Boom, and he gets hit by the trolley. So I don't know. My intuitions are kind of mixed up on that one a little bit too. But anyway, one thing that she says we all can agree with is that if you believe the right is very important, which has to be transgressed in order to divert a threat, if you believe it's very important, then your intuition is that it's not going to be okay to divert the threat in that way. Okay? So the diversion of threat itself is like morally permissible, but the means of diverting a single threat from a bigger to a smaller group matters somewhat. And that's where that last little clause comes into play. So like real life applications of this have to do with like computer programmers and stuff that are developing self-driving vehicles, automated vehicles, right? They have to be given specific and clear instructions about what to do in just such scenarios. So these scenarios have to be contemplated, and whatever morality or moral sense that we take away from the contemplation should be brought into the development of actual technologies, which very directly mirror the case of a vehicle that's no longer within the control of a particular person, but could have been programmed in a way that is equivalent to the flipping of such a switch in advance. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I don't have much more on this. I thought that it might run a little bit shorter today. And you have that video, so maybe that justifies a little bit of a shorter meeting tonight. So I'm going to let us go a bit early. Notice that I've said that if you had any question about your grade in the first essay, you could simply ask for your grade. Let me know about it. It takes me a little bit of time to reply to everybody, so if you sent me something today, I'll definitely get back to you before the afternoon tomorrow. But yeah, feel free to let me know, and I'll be replying in the order that I get messages over the next week so that everyone gets their scores in a timely fashion before we take the midterm. Okay, everyone's good? Nothing on your mind, questions or comments of any kind? Let me know in the chat, or otherwise just hit the like button, say that you're good to go. Let me know. Don't want to break away if anybody had any questions that didn't get answered or any other comments. Good, Sierra? How about you other guys? Let me know. Speak up and let me know. How's the review session going to work? Good question. Okay, thanks, Dewey. You're going to come to the review session. You've got the study guide, and we're just going to go over all the questions, as many of them as we can during the time that we do have. So it's going to be on YouTube, but I might go dual platform, which I sometimes do. So come to the YouTube meeting, and if I have a Zoom link, I'll just drop it in the comments, and then you'll be able to click the Zoom link so that we can all have a shared screen and use the mics and stuff if we want. But then the YouTube live will still keep recording. Did I say the wrong day? Thursday is the day of the review session, yes. Thursday, next class period, 2 days from today. And then Tuesday of next week, a week from today, is when we have the actual exam. So like all I was saying is that I might run the YouTube camera so that you'll have the recorded lecture to go back to on my channel to review later if you want. But then I'll have a separate window open in which we can use the Zoom platform capabilities too. Okay, so I think then we should be good to go. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night then, and I'll be in touch over the next days. Take care.